This is a story about finding meaning, an emotional life journey wrapped inside a mysterious self-discovery story. Saide Sink believed she understood darkness, until the night she learned what waited inside it, and what she found changed everything. If you think this is just another sniper tale, wait until you see why nobody takes snipers at night, and why she decided to try. Saide Sink had always believed the night had a voice, quiet, patient, unwilling to lie. Most people feared that voice. She didn't. She listened to it. She learned from it. And sometimes, when the silence stretched thin enough to tremble, she spoke back. Tonight though, the desert felt different. The air carried a quiet she didn't trust, the kind that made even trained instincts hesitate. Cold sand shifted beneath her boots as she stepped out of the Black Hawk and felt the darkness swallow her shape. Behind her, the seal element moved like shadows, disciplined, precise. But every man looked at her the same way, with respect wrapped in doubt. She couldn't blame them. 10 snipers in a single operational window, 2 hours until sunrise, no drones, no illumination, no second chances. Impossible wasn't written on the mission brief, but it hung in the air like smoke. Saide pulled her scarf tighter against the wind. She felt the edges of her doubts more sharp, but she kept them tucked away. The night didn't care about fear. It cared about clarity, and right now, clarity meant focusing on the rhythm of her breath and the smell of iron carried by the cold desert breeze. A few meters behind her, Warren muttered to Briggs, just loud enough for her to hear. No one takes snipers at night. Not 10, not even 5. Not out here. Saide didn't turn, but she felt the words land between her shoulder blades. She'd heard variations of it for years, too ambitious, too fearless, too certain. They labeled confidence as recklessness because it made them comfortable. But comfort was never her pursuit. She crouched low, letting her gloves slide across the sand. The grains were colder than usual. The desert had exhaled its heat early. That mattered. Cold sand carried sound differently. A hook of intuition tugged at her. Someone else was listening to this night with equal intent. Saide rose as Briggs approached, his expression hard enough to carve stone. "You lead," he said simply. No lecture, no warning, just a boundary of trust he wasn't sure she would respect. She nodded once. Her confidence wasn't bravado. It was preparation, years of studying how the night bent sound, how wind moved over fractured rock, how a rifle behaved when the temperature fell just below freezing. Training wasn't repetition. It was the art of noticing what others never questioned. And tonight, something in the silence was wrong. She took the first step toward the ridge. Her boots left almost no imprint, her movements steady, soft, dissolving into the environment instead of disturbing it. The seals followed, but they felt heavier behind her, more visible, more human. The desert stretched ahead like an abandoned cathedral, columns of jagged rock, aisles of moonless sand, and a roof of stars that watched without judgment. Saide felt the darkness settle into her lungs, familiar, almost comforting. She inhaled it like truth, then she froze. A vibration, subtle, too soft for ordinary ears, but not too soft for hers. She raised one hand. The team halted instantly. Briggs leaned close. "What do you have?" She didn't answer. She was busy listening to the faint tremor of metal shifting against stone. A sniper adjusting his bipod, careful, confident, too comfortable. Saide's heartbeat steadied. First one, Northridge. Elevation difference, 23 meters. Wind, drifting left. Inconsistent. Distance, 440 meters. Rhythm, predictable. She lowered herself onto one knee, letting her rifle settle into her shoulder like a living extension of her spine. The darkness thinned around her scope, revealing the slightest thermal flutter, barely a whisper of heat. A target. But as she took her final breath, something unexpected murmured in the wind, a second heat signature. Same ridge, same discipline, same posture. They were paired. Her stomach tightened with fear, but with recognition. Whoever trained these snipers wasn't ordinary. This wasn't random violence. It was architecture, intent, design. Saide steadied her finger. She had time for one shot before both vanished into the dark. She exhaled, and then a sudden metallic snap cracked across the dunes. Not from the enemy. From behind her, from her own team. Someone had stepped on loose shale. A mistake. A fatal one. The night shifted. So did the enemy. The first muzzle flash bloomed like a star being born. And Saide realized she was already too late. Or exactly on time. If you want more of this life-meaning story and faceless YouTube suspense narrative, continue to the next part. Like, follow, and stay with this emotional storytelling journey. It gets darker from here. The first muzzle flash tore through the dark, a brief white wound across the dunes. Saide didn't flinch, she absorbed it. Light carried direction, Sound carried distance. Even fear carried information if you knew how to listen. But the rookie behind her, Marlowe, did not listen. His breath caught in his throat, loud enough for the night to hear. The enemy sniper recalibrated instantly. Saide swung her rifle left 3 degrees. Almost by instinct, her scope swallowed the darkness and revealed the faint thermal bloom of the shooter shifting for a second shot. He was smart firing, scooting, settling, breathing, rhythm. He had a rhythm. She exhaled once, long and steady, once, long and steady, cracked softly, a suppressed whisper swallowed by the desert. Through the scope, the heat signature collapsed like a candle flame snuffed by wind. But the second sniper on the ridge did not run. He did something worse. He waited, not moving, not panicking, not revealing even a flicker of heat more than necessary. That was the signature of someone who understood the night the way she did. Leader, Saide whispered. He's studying us. Briggs cursed under his breath. We move now. She didn't. Movement would expose them. The second sniper wanted motion. Any motion to define his next shot. Hold, she murmured. Silence stretched. The cold pressed harder. Even the wind felt cautious, as if reluctant to disturb the space between hunter and hunted. Saide closed her eyes. Sometimes, vision lied, but sound rarely did. She listened past the storm's residue, past Marlowe's shaky breathing, past her own heartbeat. There, a granular shift, soft, almost tender, sand sliding beneath a slow knee adjustment. Farther right, higher. He had repositioned into an angle only someone experienced would choose, where her team's silhouettes became faint outlines against the lower ridge. Saide rolled 3 feet left, flattening herself into the sand. She waited. Her trigger finger remained still, a faint clatter, metal tapping rock. Bipod adjustment. He was ready. Her eyes sharpened. She fired. The heat faded instantly and silent, decisive. Briggs exhaled heavily. 2 down, 8 to go, she corrected softly. But the night felt different now. The desert no longer watched passively. It felt aware, alert, as if the remaining snipers had sensed their fallen comrades and shifted into something colder, more deliberate. Saide scanned the ridges. Patterns emerged. Not random positions, but designed placements. Whoever coordinated them understood mathematics, terrain, symmetry, and psychological traps. This wasn't a loose cell. This was a system. They were stepping into someone else's blueprint. Saide knelt, fingers grazing a patch of disturbed sand, fresh minutes old. The remaining snipers were repositioning in real time, fast and fluid. Behind her, Marlowe whispered, Sink, why does it feel like they're guiding us? Because they were. She didn't tell him that. Instead, she pointed toward a narrow gully ahead. They want us funneled. That's the trap. Then we avoid it, Briggs said. Saide shook her head. No, we enter it. Briggs stared. Why? Because if they designed this kill zone, they'll be waiting in predictable patterns. And predictable enemies are the easiest to break. She stepped into the gully without waiting for approval. The night tightened around them like a fist. Saide felt it, the faint tremor of anticipation in the dark. Someone was watching her, specifically. Not the team. Her. And then, rising like a slow dawn through the silence, she heard it, a distant click. Not a rifle, a radio. They were talking about her. The hunt had become personal. Asterisk. The click echoed again, softer this time, the way a whisper falls into a closed room. Saide's stomach tightened, not from fear, but recognition. The enemy wasn't coordinating a defense. They were observing her. The gully narrowed the farther they moved, its walls jagged enough to shatter echoes into misleading fragments. Sound couldn't be trusted here. Shadows couldn't be trusted. Even the cold felt dishonest. Saide lifted one hand, signaling the team to slow. They're not surrounding us, she murmured. They're timing us. Briggs frowned. Timing what? My response is, another radio click closer. Marlowe tensed, raising his rifle. Saide lowered it gently. Don't snap. They want a reaction. She knelt, placing her palm on the sand. The night carried heat differently inside terrain like this. Cold channels, warm air pockets, subtle thermal turbulence, and beneath it, faint, irregular pulses, footfalls moving in angles rather than straight lines. Asterisk. She pictured it in her mind. Snipers leapfrogging into overlapping arcs, each able to test her decision-making by shifting minimal positions. This wasn't a cell, it was a laboratory. And she was the experiment. Saide breathed deep, slow. The desert's sentient dust, old wind filled her lungs. She needed the night to speak to her again, the way it always had when the world tried to drown her in noise. Then it came, a faint crunch somewhere to her left, A weight shift to her right. A soft, quick exhale behind a ridge overhead. 3 snipers. Not firing, just adjusting. Studying. Her spine tingled with awareness. Positions, Briggs whispered. They're not committing yet, she answered. They're watching to see who I protect first. That was the moment the realization slipped cold into her thoughts. They knew her name. She felt it in their rhythm, the precision, the calculated restraint they were showing. This wasn't random. They hadn't reacted to her kills with panic, they had reacted with interest. Sink. Briggs' voice dropped. What aren't you saying? She hesitated. When the mission brief came in, she had dismissed the intel detail as irrelevant, a fragment buried inside broken reports. Enemy sniper cell may include a former Allied trainee who defected. It hadn't mattered then. It mattered now. Someone here knows SEAL doctrine, she whispered. Someone trained with our methods. Someone who knows what I can do. The team stiffened, but she stayed calm. Fear clouded perception, and perception was her only weapon in this terrain. 3 on the ridge, she murmured, left to right. Distances and 340. 390. Briggs raised his rifle. Then let's engage. No, she said firmly. He blinked. No. If we fire first, they counter instantly. We lose the advantage. She lowered her voice to a razor's edge. But if they fire first, I trace the angles. Marlowe whispered. We're bait. No, Saide said gently. I'm the bait. You're the net. Before Briggs could protest, the first shot cracked the air. Saide dropped instantly, rolling behind a sloped boulder. The sniper hadn't aimed to kill, he'd aimed to test. A warning shot, a probe. They wanted to see whether she'd reposition left or right. She didn't move, this time. She let the silence breathe. The second sniper took the bait, firing at where she should have moved. She smiled faintly, predictable. Rifle steadied. 1 shot, 1 collapse. Remaining. But then the radio clicked again. 3 taps. Slow, deliberate. A pattern. A message. Marlowe's face paled. What does that mean? Saide whispered the translation she hadn't wanted to admit until now. It means, the next shot they fire won't be for testing. Her pulse slowed to ice. It'll be to kill. The radio fell silent, but the air grew heavier, as if the desert itself held its breath. Saide rose into a crouch, pressing her shoulder against the cold stone wall of the gully. The night no longer felt wide. It felt like a throat tightening around them. We have to shift positions, Briggs whispered. We can't, she replied. Not until we break their pattern. Briggs exhaled sharply. Sink, we're boxed in. Exactly, he stared at her, stunned. She didn't blame him. Most operators saw traps as things to escape. Saide saw them as equations to rewrite. Footsteps fluttered above them, soft, confident. 1 sniper moved left, another right, forming a crescent around the gully mouth. They weren't hiding anymore. They wanted her to know where they were. Dominance, confidence, a psychological push. Saide closed her eyes for a moment, listening. The trick wasn't hearing where they moved, but learning how they breathed. Panic breath was short. Adrenaline breath was sharp. Confident breath was controlled. She heard 3 different cadences. Only one was slow, measured, deliberate. The leader. Her breath steadied, syncing with the desert's pulse. Marlowe, she whispered. On my mark, fire 2 rounds blind toward the left ridge. What? But I don't see. They don't know that. She counted silently. 1, 2, 3, go. Marlowe fired. The shots cracked through the gully, scattering echoes like shattered glass. Instantly, 2 snipers reacted, shifting for counterfire. That was the moment Saide wanted. Their angles exposed. She snapped her rifle upward. 2 shots. 2 collapses. 5 remaining. Silence fell, again colder, sharper. The leader hadn't reacted. He hadn't moved at all. That was the problem. She turned to Briggs. He's waiting for me. Not us. Me, Briggs swallowed. Because he thinks he understands me. Her eyes narrowed, the night sharpening inside her bones. Let's prove him wrong. The gully opened into a small plateau of broken stone and uneven ground. The moonless sky pressed down, turning every shape into a shifting silhouette. Saide stepped forward alone, ignoring Briggs' hand closing around her sleeve. Sink, stay with the group. If I do that, they'll target the group, she said softly. If I separate, they target me, and that's better. For them, yes, for me, necessary. She eased herself up the slope, moving slow enough to avoid dislodging rocks. The air carried a scent. She recognized Nogan oil mixed with clay dust, a familiar combination. Whoever the leader was, he'd trained on American soil once. At the top of the ridge, she found disturbed sand knee impressions. the slight circular groove of a bipod, and something even more unsettling, half a footprint, light, precise, the mark of someone who moved like she did. Her stomach sank. A branch of the SEAL sniper program taught that walk silent, weight distributed on the outer foot, pressure absorbed by the toe, heel barely touching ground. Only 5 instructors used it, and one had disappeared 3 years ago. Commander Vale, she whispered to the wind, her former mentor, her ghost, her failure. A shot cracked past her shoulder. She spun behind a rock as sparks danced across. Stone. Vale wasn't guessing anymore. Inviting. Testing. Teaching. Saide steadied her breath. You trained me to survive the night, she whispered. Tonight I show you what else I learned. She rose. Vale fired again. So did she. 1 shot each. Only 1 hit flesh. Vale's radio clicked once, approving. The hunt had officially become a duel. The ridge descended into a vast open stretch of sand. No cover, no shadows, no mercy. Saide stepped into it anyway. The darkness thinned, as if yielding space to the 2 hunters who now understood each other too well. Vale's footsteps were invisible, but Saide felt them in the air, small shifts of displaced sand, subtle tremors beneath her boots. He circled her. A predator's orbit. She breathed slowly, letting instinct take command. You shouldn't be here. Saide. Vale's voice drifted through the dark calm, almost affectionate. She didn't answer. You were meant to follow patterns, he continued, not break them. Her grip tightened. And you were meant to protect lives, not trade sides. Silence. Then a low chuckle. You still think this is about sides? A muzzle flash blinked far right. Saide dropped, rolling. The bullet carved a hiss through the sand where her throat had been. She returned fire. 1 shot sinking with her pulse. Missed. Not by much. Vale shifted position again. He was faster than she remembered, but desperation had crept into his movement now. A slight stumble, a breath drawn too sharply. He was tiring. Saide pressed forward, letting emotion fall away like shedding armor. 10 snipers, he called out. 10 chances to prove who you are. She steadied her rifle. I already know who I am. Do you? The final question came from directly behind her. She spun. 2 shots echoed at once. The desert held its breath. Heat blossomed in her shoulder, shallow, burning. His bullet grazed. Not fatal. Her bullet didn't graze, that it struck center mass. Vale staggered, sinking to his knees, eyes bright with a strange, quiet pride. You surpassed me, he whispered. Saide lowered her rifle slowly. No, she said. You taught me too. His body fell forward, swallowed by the sand. The wind carried the last breath of the night into silence. 8 snipers, 1 mentor, 1 dawn approaching, and Saide Sink, standing alone at the edge of everything she once feared. The night had tested her. And she had answered.